Yeah, just say I have a first class honours degree.
I'll let you say it. I'll let you say it.
Just put it in the
You can
back.
take it.
Okay.
Hi guys, welcome back. Today I'm here with Waisha. We've been friends for I don't even know how long. Like I think I met her when I was like 8 years old or something like that. I think we were at the park or something.
You remember it? Oh my gosh, it was at Bourne Park.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
Yeah.
And we've basically been friends ever since. So today we're going to be running through a number of skincare questions, some political issues as well, which will be interesting to talk through. Just to give a background on Waisha, I'll let her talk through some things. So I'll let Waisha introduce herself.
Okay, great. So my name is Waisha, as Matty has said. I am 24, going to be 25 next year, and I have a first class honours degree in psychology. So I've covered stuff like mental health, developmental psychology, educational psychology, criminology, kind of all of those things, but I'm particularly passionate about educational psychology and mental health.
So let's get to the video. So firstly, do you want to go through what your skincare routine is?
Yep.
Day and night, however you do it.
Yeah, okay. So can I say the brand? Can I say
Yeah,
that?
of course, yeah.
Okay. So I use
We'll
Tropic
charge
Skin.
though.
I use Tropic Skincare. I have the ABC Daily Essentials. So that's a moisturising cleanser, that's a toner, and then that's also the moisturiser. So I just wash my face. I try not to do it day and night because the products are expensive, but I wash my face in the morning with warm water with the moisturiser. Then I do a little tone and mist, and then I throw on the moisturiser. Sometimes once a week I'll do a face mask. They have these natural face masks again. They're pretty expensive, so I only do it once a week, but that tends to be my skincare routine. But if I'm not in the mood, I'll just wash my face with warm water.
And I think people think that that's such a basic thing to do, but that actually works quite well.
But with those products, obviously I didn't know what was in them until you told me. I didn't necessarily look, but I always feel like my face is extra oily after I've used it, and I have to wipe it again, which I don't necessarily like. It's almost like, you know, if you use coconut oil on your skin, it's a repellent to water. That's kind of how they work.
Yeah, and I think that's why I do quite like products where, and this is really not that common, that's why I've tried to do it in my ones, is have an oil base in your product to moisturise your skin, but then you do need some form of starch or so on, or an ingredient. I think even like aloe vera is quite dry into the skin, and it just mattifies your skin after you've applied it.
Yeah.
Because you need that moisturisation to go to the deeper layers of your skin, but then at the end you kind of need a starch that will just take off any of the excess.
Yeah, because you don't. I literally do this for the day where I'm like wiping the oil off my skin. The products.
Those little blotting sheets. So next question is, have you had any skincare problems in the past?
Yes, I have. I actually don't know what it is. I still have it, but every now and again my skin gets really, really dry, almost like eczema, but it's not, and it's like around my nose, kind of like around the edges of my forehead. I don't really know, to be honest. It kind of, all I can describe is that it gets really dry and my skin burns, like everything burns my skin.
Really? So it gets quite sensitive?
Very sensitive.
And have you had any kind of professional opinion on that before? Have you been able to...
I've been to the doctors, but I feel like doctors kind of have a blanket kind of... I've never been to a skin doctor or a dermatologist. But the doctors kind of just say it's this... there was a name for it, but I don't remember what it's called. Rose something.
Rose something?
Yeah.
What, rosacea?
I don't know, maybe. It was like a longer one, but yeah, so I have had skin problems.
Have you found anything's worked for you in treating that?
Not really. It's more like it's always worse in the winter, and I think it's the massive change in weather.
Yeah.
My skin just doesn't like it, and then it gets really, really sore and tight and dry.
And so largely driven by weather, climate, and kind of probably humidity, really, wasn't it?
Definitely climate.
The next question is, I think you'll find this one quite interesting, is how do you deal with stress? I think stress, obviously, as we know, has a large link to a number of health concerns, and I think our skin will show up stress like very, very quickly. So I'm interested to see how you kind of cope with stress. Yeah.
Okay, so I would say, generally speaking, I'm not someone who gets overstressed. Obviously there's the natural stresses of life. I like listening to music. I guess that's a practical one. Like that helps me kind of take my mind off things that would stress me, but also exercise, because obviously the cortisol can then be like released in a way where your body, you don't produce too much of it, and it's good for you to exercise a lot. Music and exercise are how I deal with stress, but sometimes just a nice candlelit bath. where you're just kind of taking your mind off things, essential oils.
And have like a strong self-care routine.
Yeah, I do.
So I think leading on from that, in terms of stress and so on, I will put up a study, because there's a few I will probably put up in this video, but there's one in particular I find really interesting, which is how many people's mental health and their own perception of their quality life decreases with skin problems, particularly acne. And it's interesting to see that women in particular suffer from mental health decline with the similar level of severity of acne compared to the men.
Okay, yeah.
But it's interesting to see that having kind of issues with your skin does have such a large impact on people's mental health.
Yeah.
And I think that it's good to see that people are making steps forward in terms of, I see quite a lot of like acne positivity on like Instagram and so on, which I think is a great move. I think there is a degree as well of the fact that we largely shouldn't have to do that.
Yeah.
Because you should just have good products out there that don't make your skin worse in the first place.
Yeah.
So you wouldn't have to build up that own kind of inner self-confidence. But I'm curious to see what your kind of thoughts are on mental health. I know that I think for our generation in particular, mental health statistically has never been worse.
Yeah.
I think there's a huge increase in suicide, in mental health admissions. So yeah, I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on it overall.
So I think the first thing to kind of pick up on when you said about how women especially kind of have more mental health decline when it comes to kind of the skin thing, I think the most predominant reason for that is because we attach so much of our self-esteem to how we look. And I completely understand wanting to feel good and wanting to love yourself, but that shouldn't be attributed to looking a certain way. And I know it's so hard to break out of, because there's an image of how men should look and there's an image of how women should look. And I think there needs to be a healthy balance. And I think if your skin, especially on your face, is something that has acne on, or you have a skin condition, it's so obvious to everyone else. So you're constantly thinking, oh, well, they're going to think this of me because I look like this. And I think it comes with positive affirmation as well, doesn't it? Like if you look a certain way, people will say, oh, you look great, oh, you look good. And I think people,
it's even more reinforced, isn't it?
If you're constantly reinforcing that, rather than, you're a great person inside, obviously you can't see that at the start. But if we focus so much on attributing and positive affirmations for physical looks, we are part of the problem. I think it's important to actually recognise and acknowledge that everyone has a mental health. I think a lot of people just hear the word mental health and they're like,
that's interesting,
I've never had any mental health problems. No, just as you have physical health, you have a mental health, and you have to do things to kind of protect it, reinforce it, or get it back to where you feel like it should be.
You had good mental health or bad mental health.
It was either good or bad, but it's actually more of like you have an equilibrium, right? When something's off balance, off skirt, you kind of feel that.
If I want to improve my physical health, I think, okay, I need to go to the gym, I need to go for a run, I need to do some form of activity. And I think now there's an increase in awareness of mental health that we kind of are applying a similar methodology to it, that if I want to improve my mental health, I need to take active steps to do it. And it's a constant improvement. You need to apply these practices constantly. And mental health is something that we have to keep an eye on, and kind of, as you say, an equilibrium is really interesting, because you need to keep a balance of it.
The other thing that I've remembered is that you need to remember as well that the thought patterns that you have can directly affect the neurotransmitters in your brain. Whether you believe that or not, it's scientific. And if you're constantly thinking of a certain way, especially with your skin, if you're feeling like I'm not attractive or I don't feel good about myself, you're constantly releasing like more and more cortisol into your brain, and more of those neurotransmitters that are going to have more of a negative effect.
So like a bad self-talk.
And then it will affect your body physically. Like a lot of illness is directly, physical health illness is directly linked to your mental health. And I think if we can change or adapt our thought pattern, we can actually change how we are physically and then mentally. And that can be through mindfulness, that can be through meditation or prayer or whatever your practice is. Shifting that thought pattern or having positive affirmations will, to some degree, improve your mental health. I'm not saying it solves everything, because there's still a chemical balance in your brain, but it definitely helps.
Interesting, very interesting. So I think overall, to summarise some of the things that you're saying as well, is that by thinking in a certain way, by self-talking in a certain way, you can affect your own body's chemistry.
Yes,
is essentially what you're saying, isn't it?
Absolutely.
I think that's interesting. I think my next question is, because I think we've talked on women's mental health and about self-image, I think it's interesting if we can talk about men's mental health as well. And I think the issues that men have with mental health, by and large, do differ from women, just simply because how they approach mental health is very, very different.
Yeah.
I'd say how you approach mental health is far more stereotypically female, and I think how I approach mental health is far more stereotypically male. And I think there's good and bad to both. And I think that there is obviously an issue with men's mental health in society at the minute. I think male suicide is like much higher than women's suicide,
absolutely.
and particularly among young men is the issue. I think there is a degree of the fact that for some men they are struggling to find their place in the world. And I think that's why you have certain figures like Jordan Peterson who are kind of coming up the ranks, as to say, because they are kind of talking on young men's mental health and almost giving them basic steps and so on to live a fulfilling life, and to even do practices that are so basic and have habits in their daily life that are so basic, in terms of, he had that book of, was it 7 rules?
12 rules for life.
12 rules.
Yeah.
So I'm curious to see what your thoughts are on men's mental health as well. I think that we don't talk as much about our mental health anywhere near to the extent that women do.
Yeah.
I know when I've had with my friends, when we talk about mental health, it's like we will start talking about it, and we will go to some degree of depth.
Yeah.
But then it turns into a joke.
Yeah.
And I think there is a degree of like, sometimes you need resolve as an individual.
Yeah.
And you need toughness, but that really kind of discourages guys to talk about how they feel.
Yeah, definitely. I think you can correct me if I'm wrong, because obviously I'm not a male, but from a psychological point of view, I think a lot of the reasons of men's mental health, that kind of stigma stems from toxic masculinity. And I know that for some people that phrase is like an eye roll, and I don't mean like, oh, guys should be able to paint their nails and wear skirts. I don't mean that. I mean that kind of image of if a man cries, he's seen as weaker than his counterparts. And we've seen that generationally. If you look at movies and stuff, and even old school westerns, like, guys are tough and they carry guns and they protect their family. And I think we've been taught a narrative that is that, you know, men don't cry. You know, that's not something you do. And I know that crying is one element of releasing an emotion, but if you've got that one thing, to even talk about anything that you're potentially struggling with is going to make you feel like you're less than what you should be. And I think that's kind of my perspective on it. And I know that when I've spoke to other male friends, they kind of express that kind of you don't want to burden other people with your problems because you feel like you're the one who's supposed to be protecting. To that degree. Does that make sense? Would you agree?
100% agree. And I think I'll talk on a few things you said there, because I think firstly on in terms of toxic masculinity as a term, I think that men think that what people are saying when they say that is that masculinity is inherently wrong. I don't believe that is the case at all. It's not that masculinity is the issue. It's fine to be masculine, and I think that a lot of men take pride in their masculinity, but our definition of masculinity is massively skewed, in my opinion. I think even to the most minor things, it's like if I'm with my friends and we're drinking, it's like this culture of you drink until you're sick. Like you drink until you're sick, and then when you're sick, you need to sort yourself out. Because you've made yourself sick, and that makes you masculine to be able to drink to that extent. And it's just bizarre.
No,
it's if someone at some point decided that, like, the more you drink, the more masculine you can be. And it's those kind of examples that we laugh about, because to us it's just ridiculous. But it's all these little things that we do. And I remember when I was at school, this was massively ingrained in us. And I'm not blaming the teachers, but because of their, as you say about the generations, their attitudes are naturally passed on to us. And I remember being at school, and if a boy ever complained about something, they would say, whether it was the female teachers or the male teachers, they would say, stop being a girl. Or they would say, man up. Man up. That's such a classic word. It's like, man up. And then we would talk, and I remember seeing boys who would fall over and they would cry, and the teachers, they would say, oh, man up, you know. And that's fine, but then you see that over time, and you see how the girls get treated in that sense, and you see how the boys get treated. Positive reinforcement early on is so important. And if you're constantly told, stop crying, man up, stop moaning, you can't moan about your circumstances, and then you carry it into adulthood as a man, and then what happens is when you feel sad about something, as we naturally do, and you have a kind of endless amount of pressure on you, you've not only, I think for men, you've not only got to contend with the fact that you need to be earning good money to be a provider, you need to not talk about your emotions, so you need to hold all those within. You need to be kind of an emotional support or an emotional anchor for other individuals as well, whether that be a partner, kids, your family, and so on. And you know, and we constantly ingrain these ideas into people. I remember after Dad died last year, the first thing people said to me, which I found really bizarre, was, "You're the man of the house now. You're the man of the house. You need to look after these two now." And I get what they were saying behind that, but it's interesting to see people's kind of perspective on that it was like, there's no time for you to be upset now.
Yeah.
You need to toughen up.
Yeah.
And you know, and I think that I did naturally go into that. That wasn't that difficult for me to be in that position. But I can see for a lot of other individuals that a guy who's lost his dad, if you're then putting more pressure on that individual to then look after other people's emotions as well, you are completely neglecting your own mental health.
Yeah.
So I think it's a really interesting issue, and I hope that where we're making great steps with so many individuals and groups of people now, I think it would be interesting to see some more individuals kind of speak up on behalf of men as well, because I think there is a real lack there.
Definitely. And I'd say as well, like, if you are a woman who's watching this and you've dealt with men in the past who you've described as emotional, please don't do that. I feel like we complain that men don't know how to express their emotions, but the moment a guy becomes not even emotional but expresses his emotions, we label them as emotional or clingy or needy, or and I think in that case the mature thing to do would be like either have a conversation with them to see actually how they are, but also just kind of support them through it. I'm not saying carry someone's burden and have a toxic friendship or relationship, but actually we have to kind of, where we're really good at talking about stuff as women, because we are, there may be certain areas of our life that we aren't, but generally speaking we're quite good at having a conversation and leading the conversation. We might just need to take the lead on this to make you know, like our friends and our family feel like they can talk about it and not make them feel any less. And I know that for me this year that has looked like that within my own family, when my brother's been struggling, who's older than me, and I could have shut it down and been like, do you know what, don't want to talk about it with you, but I've kind of just been like, no, it's very legitimate what you're feeling. It's kind of given that reinforcement, even for a grown man. 100%. It opens up that door, because, and I think I always find it actually massively upsetting when I see like a man cry, because I think we're cultured so much to not do that when a man is crying, for me it's like, okay, this guy's really struggling now, because he's probably held in 5 years worth of what most people would probably talk about. So I think it is interesting, and I think it would be good to see more conversations about that, so we can support women's mental health, men's mental health, because you can't approach it the same. No, you can't approach mental health in the same way for different groups of people, because their struggles are very, very different. Okay, so the next question I've got for you is exercise, health, and we'll try and talk on skin as well. So I know you've kind of been a massive advocate for exercise and well-being and physical health, and you've done kind of fantastically well at the gym as well. So it'd be interesting to see what your thoughts are, how you kind of found the benefits of being kind of physically healthier, and how that led on to potentially being mentally healthier, how it kind of impacts you on your lifestyle. Okay, so I think when I first started to go to the gym, I was kind of just going to the gym. I didn't really have any kind of outcome or goal. I think that was my first mistake. Not because you need a goal, but I think even if the goal is I want to be happier in my mind, it's just something, because I think if we don't set goals, we kind of just tend to coast along, and then it's like, you're not specific about what you want to achieve. I thought, okay, actually I want to lose weight. That was the first one. Then it was, I just wanted to feel good. Like I was always tired, and I'd had a lot of health issues in my body, and I was just tired of my body kind of ruling and dictating that kind of, I was like, no. I think for me, the biggest change, especially with diet, was, and it is linked to skin, when I cut out, so I was dairy free. My skin was glowing. Like, I think it's interesting, isn't it? Like, I think a lot of people have found
dairy, albeit it doesn't seem to, I've kind of looked for studies on this because anecdotally people have talked on this so much that by cutting out dairy their skin has got better in terms of inflammation. It doesn't even have to be acne, it can be your complexion overall, and I think people have found massive benefit in that. I would theorize that the hormones that they give to cattle to keep them producing milk year round, it's not a natural hormonal balance for these animals to have, and they must be carrying a degree of these hormones through to the milk itself.
Definitely.
So it's only very recent in nature that particularly in the European descent that we can actually consume lactose past having it from our mothers. So not all of us are adapted, and that's why you have such a high prevalence of people who are lactose intolerant as well. And we're just talking about being able to digest the sugar, let alone obviously all the other
stuff that goes in it.
Exactly.
I probably don't even want to know. But so dairy was one of the biggest things that I noticed. And also with I'm kind of an advocate for, at first I was an advocate for like healthy eating and dieting. I'm not anymore. I think diet culture is very toxic. I believe in intuitive eating. I think you should eat what your body wants at the time within moderation, because when you restrict yourself you get to the point where you just purge, and that's not, I'm not talking even on a binge eating level where people actually struggle mentally. I'm just talking like, you've not eaten for a while something that you really like and you're constantly craving it, but you're restricting your body so much to the point that once you get it you kind of spiral, and then you feel bad about yourself because you feel like you've done something wrong, and then you build this toxic relationship with food. And actually I found like I go to the gym 5 times a week. If I want to eat a piece of chocolate or a chocolate bar, I'm going to eat it, and I won't really care because I know I'm going to the gym the next day.
There's benefits to kind of improving your body composition, but if that comes at the cost of sacrificing your mental health, it's not going to be worth it. It's not going to be worth it in the long term, because ultimately your mental health can only degrade so far before you will just stop exercise and stop looking after yourself altogether. And I think that a lot of people, when they think about foods, because this is how we've been taught again, is they think in the sense of this food's bad, this food is good. It doesn't work like that. Your body needs such a strong distribution of different foods.
I think linking it back to the skin thing though, I think if you are aware that eating certain foods makes you break out, definitely try and eliminate them. But also don't become one of these people who, if you do punish yourself for eating certain foods, once that plays in your head, that is then going to release more cortisol, and then you're probably going to break out even more. So you have to kind of find a balance where, okay, if something is affecting your body, then for sure eliminate it. But if you're doing it to the point of you're affecting your body because of your mental health, then you need to eliminate that thought and kind of change your thinking.
100%. It takes a long time to work out your triggers for acne, I have to admit, and I've obviously had to spend a lot of time working out what mine are. And this doesn't just apply to acne, but it applies to eczema and so on, any kind of inflammatory skin condition. But for me, I found that caffeine was a big one, and high saturated food was another one, as well as I would say dairy to a minimal degree with me, but I don't have too much of it. But I think in terms of, for people in general, the big ones tend to be trans fats. You should not really be going anywhere near. Trans fats are not a natural occurring fat. It's kind of a synthetic fat that has been created by adding hydrogen ions. So you want to stay away from that. It just causes such a degree of inflammation around the body.
So wait, can I pause you there? For people who don't know what trans fats are, can you give an example of what foods that would be in? A
trans fat will be in products like pizzas, fast food, any kind of fast food. You're very likely to have trans fats, and the reason is they taste really good.
Yeah, they do.
And trans fats take a lot longer to break down in terms of their shelf life than saturated fats do. So that's the first trigger. I'd say secondly, caffeine will be common for a lot of people. I don't think people realize this, but like you say about cortisol, what do you think caffeine does to your body? We feel this sudden surge of energy, and that largely comes from adrenaline, but it comes from cortisol as well. So it will increase your sebum production, and it will increase any kind of inflammation as well.
Right, I didn't know about that one actually.
And alcohol is another one. The biggest way for our skin to get rid of toxins, and alcohol is a toxin, is through our skin. Our skin has to sweat out toxins. That is largely toxins are dealt with our liver, but through our skin is how we kind of expel those toxins. And once you get hungover the next day, once you have suppressed your cortisol and elevated your dopamine, the next day what happens, and this is kind of how you get your hangover symptoms, is your dopamine just completely is depleted and your cortisol is massively raised the next day. That's why people can't deal with any pressure when they're hungover, because they're kind of in a state of anxiety. So your skin will break out the next day. And one thing to consider when you are testing your own triggers, because you need to try everything, is acne can take around 2 weeks to come out.
Okay.
So sometimes a lesion will kind of take a day or two. So when people think, oh, something works straight away, no, it doesn't. It's likely that it will take up to 2 weeks for a spot to appear. So anything you've done for the last 2 weeks, you need to think about. And this is what people forget quite often. Okay, so the next question, which I think would be an interesting topic to talk on, is just the representation of black skincare products in the market. I think from what I've seen online, I think in terms of the actual statistics as well, black skincare is a massively underrepresented kind of category.
Yeah.
Females is massively represented, and I think white skin is massively represented in terms of products.
Yeah.
And I'm curious to see, firstly, what your thoughts on that are, and secondly, what your own experience with that is. Have you kind of found that certain products just aren't as useful for your skin, or that you've kind of, as you said before, with your own skin condition and so on as well? I'm curious to see, have you kind of looked out for a certain product and you just haven't been able to find something in the market, or you've always kind of felt that the products that you've had to use just aren't as catered for your skin type as, say, you know, for other individuals?
Yeah. Firstly, my thoughts are, I'm not surprised. I feel like if you look in any kind of major sector of marketing, the main kind of marketing audience are white Europeans. I think it's safe to say. And I think that's just how it's been. And I think it is shifting, because I don't know, this year definitely has made people think, actually, I should probably represent people of colour more. And that's not just black people, that's other people of colour as well. Yeah. But I think it is kind of embarrassing for them, in a sense of, like, especially in Western society, there's so much like kind of diversity that there's no real excuse now to say that you're not representing people, because they say, like, oh, you know, we couldn't find a black person for this or an Asian person for that, and it's like, are you seeing the same people? Because I mean, it wouldn't be that difficult. And I think it's not surprising, but it is frustrating, because what does happen is when there are products for my skin, they'll have double the price on. Now this isn't necessarily skin, but it's hair, and I don't know if you've noticed, but places like Superdrug and Boots have started stocking black hair care products, but they're charging double the price that I would find them in stores, and I'm like, no, because this is ridiculous. Like, it's extortionate. Why am I going to spend £20 on shampoo when if I go to London, or if I go to somewhere where, even the shops in Ipswich, they might have a little bit more of a price, but they're more reasonable, and you pay for it because that's what you've got.
I think it's interesting you talk on cost, because as I've said, that black skincare is massively underrepresented. It statistically as well is the average consumer who is Afro-Caribbean, and this is for hair care and for skincare as well, they spend on average far more.
Oh, 100%.
Like far more. It's such a statistical difference. And I think that's really, and I think there, as you said, there is a degree that if you take hair care, for example, they may be more willing to spend more money. But I think it's largely the fact that because there is such a lack of representation, that there's certain companies who are taking advantage of that situation.
100%. And I think that it was interesting, again, during the whole stuff that have come out this year, a lot of businesses that were presumed to be black owned because they were black they were targeted at black people were owned by not black people, and they were like, oh, the prices are ridiculous. Not that I don't think that particularly matters, because I realised that actually if you're making something for someone that is actually beneficial, I don't care what colour you are. It's just a great product. But yeah, I think it can be disheartening, and I think for myself, I got to a point where I tried so many products, and I don't know if I feel like everyone should use natural products as far as they can, but I feel like with black people's skin, it's a lot more sensitive in a different way than I've realised. So I cannot use anything on my skin that's perfumed or with loads of chemicals in. You know, like you go to Boots and you get like the body washes or Victoria's Secret body wash or any body wash that comes with a perfume. I don't think anyone should use them on their skin, but particularly not black people. And I find that those products would either irritate my skin or dry my skin out. And the thing with black skin is it does naturally produce oils, but more. And I don't want, like, a lot of products I use would be drying out my skin. And I actually got to a point where I did my own research and I started buying my own products off Amazon, like raw products. So I bought raw shea butter and almond oils and argan oils, and I'd melt it down, I'd mix up my own stuff, making my own hair masks and face masks. And because I just feel like natural products are good for everyone, but specifically for black people's skin, I don't believe that there are representations in marketing.
No, I'd agree. I think from what I've seen as well, in terms of the products that are on offer for black skin, I'm not convinced that a lot of these products are good enough quality. Frankly, I think that black skin is quite different. If we compare it to Caucasian skin, black skin, there's a higher chance there'll be an acne sufferer. They tend to have oilier skin, but oilier and dry combination. It's an interesting subject, because you're more likely to have dry skin and oily skin at the same time. So it can be a little bit difficult to treat. But the problem with the products that I've seen is, as you said, they're either highly perfumed, which I don't agree with perfumes overall. I don't see that they're necessary. I think you can use natural ingredients to give it a nice smell.
Oils,
exactly. And they only need to be in very small quantities to give it a really nice smell to a product. I think secondly, they use really rich emollients. So if we talk so you say like shea butter, for example. So shea butter is great because it's very rich, provides a lot of healthy fats to the skin, but it's non-comedogenic, as we spoke about earlier, so it doesn't clog your pores, and that's a great one. But if we take cocoa butter, for example, I mean, that is, in terms of, if you look on my website, in terms of the comedogenic rating for ingredients, cocoa butter is like a 4 or a 5.
It's really
so
bad.
It will just, okay, you've sorted your dry skin, but now you've got spots.
And
I think that people, again, it comes back to they make products that take advantage of people's circumstances to some degree, because I think from in terms of my kind of social group, it's been that my white friends have been more worried about pigmentation because it shows up more. If I get spots, it will show up more if I'm pale. You know, if I look like something out of Twilight, a spot's gonna show up straight away. Whereas for darker skin types, dryness will show up a lot quicker.
Oh my gosh, the ash.
You know, as like ashy skin, as you like to call it. What we tend to do is, for people with paler skin, we go, okay, you're worried about spots and redness, so we'll start with your spots. But you don't need to worry about dryness, so we'll just dry your skin out. And then for black skin, we go, okay, we need a really rich moisturizer. We need a moisturizer that is so thick that you will never have to worry about ashy skin, but you're going to get pimples. But you don't have to worry about the pigmentation of your pimples as much, so it's fine. I just don't understand why we can't have products that to just cater for both of those scenarios. You should have a product that stops your skin being dry, but doesn't give you pimples. You know, there's plenty of moisturizers out there that can be quite rich but do not clog your pores.
And I think it's also just being practical, and I'm so glad you mentioned cocoa butter, because for generations that's been targeted predominantly at black people, and it's like, oh, you must use cocoa butter, and it's like, do you not realize how bad cocoa butter is? No, I do not use cocoa butter. I use something that's actually good for my skin. And it makes, like you said, how it clogs your skin. And I think the other one, I don't know how much you know about this one, but probably more than me, is coconut oil. When that started to become popular, everyone was like, yeah, coconut oil, black people need to use coconut oil. coconut oil was so bad for your skin and your hair because it just doesn't let anything in or out. Like you put coconut oil on it, and
It's
you
so
basically
thick,
got
isn't it?
a barrier of lard. And I remember being in high school and there was only one black teacher there, a PE teacher, and he would go on the mat and do something to demonstrate and leave all the coconut oil residue on the mat. It was slippery, it was dangerous, health and safety risk assessment. And I'm like, that's not practical though, isn't it? Like,
No.
you can't be putting stuff on your skin.
That's hard to explain that you've hurt yourself like that. So.
Everything you touch. I did it once. I bought this cocoa butter, the hard cocoa butter. It was Palmer's, big mistake.
Yeah.
And I moisturised my skin, and then my skin accidentally brushed past my brother's newly painted walls, and he had to repaint the walls because the oil
It's so thick.
the oil got on the wall, and that's what happened. I can't touch anything after I've had coconut oil or anything like that.
It's
not
so
practical.
It's very, very
it's
greasy, isn't it?
That's why they cook with it.
Exactly. Yeah, I think coconut oil, as you said, again, is a really highly comedogenic ingredient. And that was one I forgot to mention, actually. But yeah, it was really common with like hair care at one point. And I remember they were using it for like oil pulling on your teeth as well.
Oh, yeah.
But the thing is, what people need to realize, when a product or a certain ingredient becomes very popular very quickly, it's not because that product has just been suddenly found and it's really good. It's just because a company goes, okay, we've got an abundance of this ingredient, so we are going to sell it in every single way that we can. You know, so that's why they go, okay, you can rinse your mouth of it, and you can do your hair, and then you can do your skin,
And you cook with it as well.
and you can cook with it as well. You know, you've got to look at people's intent, particularly when you're looking at companies. So thank you guys for watching that. I actually really enjoyed this video. I think it was some really interesting topics that we spoke on, and Wiser gave some really, really good insight into this video. So I hope it was useful for people watching, or at least kind of entertained them to some degree. You know, so if you did enjoy the video, please check out Waisha's channel. I will link it in the bio. Please make sure you like and share this video and so on. We'll also be doing a video on Waisha's channel, just a bit more of a kind of podcast type video. So it'll be less specific to skincare and just more general friendship questions and so on. So make sure you check that out. See you later, guys.